This happened to me just about 6 years ago, back in 2011. It was April Fool's Day, and I thought it would be fun to prank one of my close friends. Now, my dad, who is overweight, also had diabetes, so my cousin who was with me at the time and I thought it would be believable to use my dad and that this would be a really good prank. I contacted my friend and told him that there was something wrong with my dad and we weren't really sure what it was, but that we were on our way to the hospital. To make a long story short, he believed me and I got him for April Fools. Less than a week goes by and it was no different than any other day. I woke up and turned on the TV and started to play some video games. I didn't have a job at the time and I was pretty lazy, so this is normally what I did when I was at home. As I was sitting there playing my games, my dad came over to me and asked if I could charge my mom's phone, and of course I told him no problem. Now, my mom had just worked the graveyard shift, so she was fast asleep in my parents' bedroom. Some time went by and I heard my dad gasping, but I didn't think anything of it besides the fact that he was probably messing around, as it was in his nature to joke and play around a lot. So I continued to play my video game, and sometime later I eventually heard my dad gasp again, and this time I told him it wasn't funny because I thought he was making fun of a relative who had serious health problems. I didn't get no response from my father, and I realized that something serious was going on. I ran into the room that he was in and saw that he was unresponsive. So I quickly ran into my parents' bedroom and yelled at my mom to get up, and we both ran back into the room he was in and called 911. The operator said that we needed to start CPR, but the most difficult part was me and my mom trying to place my father on the floor, who was a big man. Somehow, we were able to move him onto the floor, and then the operator told me I had to hand the phone over to my mom, as she was certified in CPR. I gave the phone to my mom, and I could hear the operator coaching my mom while she gave CPR to my dad. I just stood there in shock, not knowing what to do. I sat there and watched my mother cry while she tried to save my father. I never felt so worthless in my entire life. I looked into my father's eyes, and the stare they gave me will haunt me forever. I will never forget how lifeless they looked. The ambulance finally arrived, and we moved everything out of the way as quickly as possible so they could get to my father and do what they are trained to do. The emotion at this point became overwhelming that I had to step outside. I called my cousin and told him what was going on, and at first he didn't believe me since he was the one that knew about my April Fool's prank a few days prior and thought I was trying to trick him. He lives in my same neighborhood, so when he saw the ambulance he realized I wasn't messing around and he came right on over. The paramedics rushed my father to the nearest hospital and we followed quickly with my aunt who drove because my mother and I were in no condition to drive. Once we arrived at the hospital, we sat in the waiting room for what seemed to be an eternity. As I waited, I prayed to a God that I wasn't even sure existed, and I wished that I could just fade away with my father. After a few minutes, which seemed like many hours, the doctor finally came out and broke us the news, and told us that my dad had suffered a massive heart attack. He also said that he had a faint heartbeat, but in his expert opinion, the chances of my dad surviving were very slim. We continued to wait in the waiting room, and my phone kept going off with phone calls and text messages as more and more family members found out what happened. We also had to notify my sister, who just left for out of town, that dad had a heart attack and was most likely not going to survive. I felt so responsible for everything, and it just became unbearable as I heard her crying on the phone. After some time, the doctor came back out and told us that my father had died. I cannot describe how I felt after hearing those words, but what he told us next made my stomach turn. He said that in cases like this, the first few minutes are the most crucial, and there was nothing any of us could have done. But little did he know that I spent those crucial minutes playing a video game while my dad sat in the next room, gasping as he was slowly dying. I have only told this story to a few close friends, but it is something that haunts me every single day.